This past week, in our gathered service, we sang the song, Sea of Victory. And it begins with the line, "The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper." I know as we were singing, I was thinking, well, sometimes it sure feels like they do. I think back to that tree that fell on our house a couple of months ago. It crushed one end of the roof, damaged a couple walls, destroyed our deck, and even totaled a couple of our cars. It seemed to me like it found its target. It scored a hit. The weapon prospered. I looked up that phrase about the weapon not prospering, though, and it comes right out of Isaiah 54, verse 17. No weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed. Another translation says, no weapon that can hurt you has ever been forged. Now, also, on Sunday, we were in the book of Daniel in our Timeless series, and that struck me as interesting because this phrase about no weapon formed against you shall prosper is often connected to some really well-known events in Daniel, like the one in Daniel chapter 3, where Daniel's three friends are surrounded by a king and a culture who want them to compromise their allegiance to God. A law has even been passed requiring them to worship an idol, but they stand firm in their loyalty to God. The king hears about their defiance of his law and ties them up with ropes and throws them into a blazing hot, fiery furnace. The ropes catch fire and burn off of them, and the three men walk out completely unharmed. Or the events in Daniel chapter 6, where Daniel himself is this object of jealousy and scheming and conniving and a plot to take his life. A law is manipulatively passed in order to catch and punish this God follower based on his personal prayer life. Daniel remains committed to his private prayer time. He's caught and found guilty and thrown into a den of lions overnight to be executed. But the mouths of the lions are shut, and again, he comes out completely unharmed. So when the phrase about no weapon being formed against us prospering is connected to stories like these, it certainly makes it seem like nothing should ever physically harm us. No damage should come to us. Then we go a step further and conclude that nothing unpleasant or uncomfortable should happen to us. Now, we know in our heads that view can't really be true, especially when we think of it in light of the cross, of Jesus, God's own Son, who was allowed to suffer extreme physical harm and even death. So this phrase must mean something beyond simple physical protection. What I was reminded of is this. When unpleasant or bad things happen to us or our loved ones, or when someone does evil against us, these bad and evil things themselves aren't really the primary weapon of the enemy. What happens is that our enemy wants us to attach lies to those events. He is, after all, the father of lies, a deceiver by name and nature. So, for instance, the tree falls on our house, and I start to question, God, where are you in this? Now, there's nothing wrong with asking the question. The problem comes in when I don't force myself to get a biblical answer. For instance, when the tree fell on our house, that's a bad thing. If I go to his word, I find abundant truths that can help, that I shouldn't be surprised when bad things happen in this broken world. I find promises about his presence with me in all things. I find reminders that this world is important, but it is only my temporary home. I find promises that I am part of his family and that he loves me and cares for me through all things. But the lie that the enemy could attach to that event, the weapon the enemy wanted to form, was the idea that I can't take one more thing. The idea that I'm weary, I'm overwhelmed, and I just can't take anymore. I've got nothing left to give. So in my case, once I started believing that, I began to get a little self-pity groove going on. And before you know it, I'm expecting my family to cater to me on many levels because I'm overwhelmed and I think I deserve it. And then there's this kind of simmering angst towards God because doesn't he know I'm already overwhelmed? How could he let this happen? So very quickly, I'm on a subtle but definite trajectory away from loving and serving my family and toward being selfish with them. And I'm laying the first blocks in the beginning of a wall between me and God. That is far more damaging than what the tree physically did to our stuff. You see, the more dangerous weapon long-term, spiritually dangerous weapon is the lie that the enemy wants to attach to that bad or unpleasant or evil set of circumstances in your life. Once the lie is recognized, it can be called for what it is. The truth can take its rightful place in your life. The accompanying actions can be repented of, and the burden gets lifted. No weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed. The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. My brothers and sisters, any lies attached to hard things in your life,